Hey Aditya, welcome back to Magnifloss, where we talk about anything and everything, whatever's on our minds at the present time. I really liked your video about chaos theory. Again, I don't think I quite understood the math, but maybe you could spend another video or two explaining that math behind the diagrams. I feel like that would help me and perhaps help a lot of our other viewers. Now, I'd like to make this video an open letter to the orchestra, and I'd like to focus specifically on rigidity in music. Now, when I say rigidity in classical music, what do I mean? What I mean is that we haven't been experimenting a whole lot with the actual instruments that we're using. The orchestra has been more or less the same since about 1900. This wasn't always true. If you look at the orchestra of 1600 and compare it to the orchestra of 1700, you'll see quite a difference. And it's even more pronounced from 1700 to 1800 or 1700 to 1900. So why hasn't it changed since then? Here's an example of something that has always been the case since about 1850. The double bass. This instrument has been tuned in fourths, starting on a low E. That's an E1, the lowest E on the piano. That is an A1, just above it, a D2, and a G2. And that's it. But there used to be a lot more variation in how you would do things. The other bass there, that belongs to my college, I've tuned to this. But those are the open strings. You get a completely different sound, a completely different way of playing, and suddenly a lot of passages that wouldn't make sense on this instrument make sense on that one. Because this instrument, as it's tuned now in what is called Viennese tuning, from Vienna in the late 18th century, so the late 1700s. Why is that significant? Well, a lot of the repertoire that we play comes from that period and was written for that instrument. And now we're trying to play it on this instrument, which is from about 50 or so years later, and it just doesn't work. Some of the passages require me to go. Now, you'll note that that doesn't sound very good. But on that instrument, those are just the open strings up an octave, and so you just use the harmonic. Remember the harmonic series from the first episode? Just use the first harmonic, which gives you the octave for all the strings, and now you have that arpeggio in D major. So I wonder, why aren't we experimenting anymore? Why aren't we making new instruments all the time? Is the orchestra complete? Is there nowhere to go with the orchestra? I think part of the reason that a lot of people feel classical music is dying is because we're not trying hard enough to create something new. Now watch this. Movie magic. This is the Viennese bass. Now it's not actually an old Viennese bass, but it's tuned in Viennese tuning. So what you get with this instrument is A1, D2, F sharp 2, and A2. So you'll notice these strings are really close together in terms of their intervals. This instrument provides an opportunity to think about the instrument in a different way, which we haven't been doing since 1800. Are there instruments that used to be popular that aren't anymore? The answer is yes. People often think about the recorder as a children's instrument, but is actually a proper instrument that people play professionally, and it sounds beautiful. I think it's time, maybe, that the orchestra start to evolve again, because it's been kind of the same piccolo, flute. It's just been that way for so long. Maybe people are just getting tired of it. I would like to see the orchestra get revived. Maybe revive some old instruments, like this. Now, I'm not saying that that works for everything, but I think rethinking our orchestra could help us rethink music, classical music anyway, and maybe bring the orchestra back from wherever it is now. Bring back some old stuff and make it new, and I think people will come and watch. That was my open letter to the orchestra. Aditya, I have some questions for you that I'm gonna ask after movie magic. I have some questions about math. Tell me a little bit about these in your next video. Maybe you could answer some of these questions for me. Number one, when you say that math doesn't need to have a direct application to anything, that is mostly a theoretical, art, essentially, how does that work and how do you think about it? Number two, you've talked about how the math curriculum ought to be changed. Do you think that it can be implemented? How feasible do you think that is and how long would that take? And three, out of the various sub-disciplines of math, which one is your favorite and why? So that's all for this vlog today. I hope that you have enjoyed a little open letter to orchestras, and Aditya, I'll see you next week.